It is 5:30 p.m. and I now call to order the Grand Island Public Schools Board of Education meeting. This is the August 14, 2025 meeting. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the Grand Island Independent, which is the district's designated method of giving notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance to the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it in to us so that you may be recognized during the request to address the board part of our meeting. If you have not already completed the form, please see the staff person outside the entrance to this room. Public comment is welcome. We do ask that no signs be brought into the boardroom. Mrs. Dibbert, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McFarland.
Present.
Mr. Hawley.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Present.
Mrs. Albers.
Here.
Mr. Sykes.
Here.
Mr. Barsonis.
Yes.
Mrs. Douglas.
Here.
Mrs. Wilson.
Here.
Mrs. Goodman.
Here.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is to be approved as follows. Items number 3.1 through 3.10. This is the consent agenda as published. Would anyone like to remove any items or add any items to the consent agenda? Seeing none, does anyone?
I will be abstaining from voting on check number 101496 on agenda item 3.3. I approve all other items on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Albers. All right. So at this moment in time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, this is for AP recognition of high school level students from the 2024 to 2025 AP testing. Students will be recognized for stellar results in their AP exams. Honorees for the board meeting earned the titles of AP Scholar with Honor, and AP Scholar with Distinction. Ms. Opal Bentley.
All right, good evening. I am Opal Bentley, the MTSS Academic and Assessment Coordinator for Grand Island Public Schools, and I am here super excited to honor over 20 AP Scholars this year. Just to give you a little background about our advanced placement AP assessments, we offered 15 advanced placement assessments this past spring, ranging from math, science, history, Spanish, music, and great news, we have an increase in students who are scoring a 3 or better. So that is our goal for students to score either a 3, 4, or 5 on the advanced placement assessment. And we are at a 5-year high. We are at 54% of students scoring 3 or higher, which is super exciting. We gave a total of 394 exams this spring, and there were 154 students who scored above a 3. But our students that we're honoring today scored 3 on multiple exams. So to announce, Julie Markovica is our AP assessment coordinator at the high school. Mindy Ulmer has done it for many, many years and couldn't be here today, but Julie is here today and she is going to announce our AP Scholars this year.
Mr. Fisher and Mr. McFarland, I present to you the AP Scholars that have received a score of 3 or higher and took at least 3 AP exams throughout all of their high school years. Maddox, Inc. Kimberly Fuentes Ochoa. Claire Gartner. Alejandra Kirschbaum. Jennifer Lara Patino. Annie Wen. Brian Rauda. Isabella Rowe. Diana Stevenson. Aaron Tensky. Noah Veek. Michael Westerby. The next group of scholars took at least 4 AP exams in their high school and continued to score with high marks. Daniela Cortez. Riley Halling. Catherine Johnson. Brandon Ramirez Vega. Alex Weaver. Kale Wiegert. And our last group of scholars took at least 5 or more AP exams with an average score of 3.5 on all of those. Reagan Court. Olivia Madison. And Sarah Wickman.
Sorry, Ms. Marbella.
Oh, you're fine. And Noah Jaworski. In the right category.
All right.
We do a quick picture and then y'all can finish. Is that all right? Mr. Hubbard, Mr. Hubbard, do you want to be in the photo? Okay. All right. Everybody look this way, look at me, and if you can see me, then I can probably see your face. If you can't see me, then we probably can't see your face, all right? So find a window, and we'll get it framed up. I'm going to do this really quick. Is that all right? All right. Okay. Good deal. Okay, smile and hold it. All right, here we go. Couple more. All right, don't move. Parents, if you want to get photos, feel free. Come on up.
Say cheese.
We also wanted to just give honor to our advanced placement teachers. So we invited them to come here today. We have a few that are here, so if you guys could just stand up, let's give our AP teachers a round of applause as well. Thank you guys so much and congratulations.
Okay, we're now ready for item number 5, requests to address the board. We do have one person who would like to address the board. You may come forward at this time.
Hello. I wanted to ask a question because there was a discrepancy in the form I filled out. In one part of it, it says I get 5 minutes. On another part, it says I get 3. I do have 2 topics that I would like to share on, so at this time, I would like to request that I have 3 minutes to talk about both.
Certainly. We can give you 5 minutes if you'd like.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah.
All right.
Just, if I don't stop on myself, give me a look.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Amber Harper. I use she, her pronouns. I have 2 students in the GIPS district right now. I am a mother of 5. Professionally, I work for the Nebraska Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. That means working with survivors and programs across the state as they actively escape crisis situations, including sexual, domestic violence, trafficking, and stalking. Locally, I chair a coalition called the Grand Island Area Coalition on Trafficking, and I recently was accepted as a parent ambassador on the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation for the upcoming 25-26 year. The first topic that I would like to talk to you about today comes from discussion on a policy of the last meeting concerning protections within dress code, bullying, and harassment policies for racial and ethnic hair. I can understand as a white person and looking at a board that is mostly white that there would be a lack in understanding of why those things are so important to include. My husband is Black, my children are biracial, and it took a really long time. I'm still learning how to properly care for their hair. There are lots of different types of curl patterns. One of my children has 4C, which is like the hardest to condition and keep moisturized and clean and work with. And then I have another who's a little half and half. Half of her hair straight, the other half has a little bit of a curl. With that, I do all of my family's hair. I cut their hair, I braid their hair. I can also lock hair. Because that's not something that's offered in this area of the state. Even looking at cosmetology schools, it's not necessarily something that students can specialize in. There aren't necessarily barbers or other stylists that can do that hair. And then also you add in like the cost of it, right? I'm just gonna speak for my family. Black hair is really expensive to get it cut, get it washed, get it put in a protective style. And then really to maintain that well, it's about 4 to 6 weeks. So you're looking at anywhere from $60 to $200 depending on the type of cut or style you want. That's neither here nor there. In a public school setting, often my children have been asked by other students, teachers, and staff if they can touch their hair. They're often kind of like tokenized for the kind of hair that they have. Additionally, during Black History Month, like my students have been in classrooms where it was pointed out, specifically within elementary school, that if they lived when Martin Luther King Jr. lived, they wouldn't have been allowed to go to this school. They would have had to gone to the school down the street. All of that is really connected to oppression. And as keepers of our school district, I want to assume the best of intentions that you want to protect any and all students, and it's not a matter of keeping the policy short. I see my light flashing. In addition to that, I want to say Senator Terrell McKinney actually passed LB 289. It was supposed to go into effect July 1st of this year, where all school districts across the state would adopt the model policy. Well, it was recommended that you adopt the model policy by the state school board. And anyways, that's LB 289. It's all listed and really nice, and it doesn't just cover hair. Like, I know, Mr. Hawley, you were talking about kind of shortening it so it wasn't so descriptive. Other folks had talked about like moving it to an appendix, but this policy lists out everything in like really nice detail. And so before you make decisions this evening, I would like to ask, did you take the time to find out what a Bantu knot is? Can any board members tell me what a Bantu knot is? Yeah, you can guess. Yeah, so the kind of knots, right? So it's where the hair is sectioned off, combed through, and then twisted into a knot that sits on top of the head. It's called a protective hairstyle because it keeps the hair together, keeps it conditioned and intact. Also with that, can you define everything that falls under the category of a head wrap?
By rule, we can't answer. We can only listen.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't aware of that, sir. So a head wrap would be like a do-rag, a bonnet. I've seen in other districts and most recently in the news of schools banning bonnets because they associate them with being sloppy, pajamas, all those kinds of things. It could be hair pieces, right? So maybe a clip and bang, maybe a toss-in ponytail. If I pull my hair back and I don't just want a little knob on top, I add some hair. So please take that into consideration. Please adopt the model policy that was put out by the State Board of Education, follow LB 289, and continue to protect our students from any and all forms of harassment, bullying, and protect them in our dress code. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harper.
I don't know what happens now.
You had a second topic you wanted to.
Oh, my second time goes? Okay. Hello, my name is Amber Harper. During the end of the last school year, you all received an email with me concerning the seatbelt checks conducted by GIPD outside of the schools. After I sent that initial email, I was able to talk to Josh Sykes, emailed me, I think maybe Amanda emailed me, and I also had a brief conversation with Summer Stevens. I also met with the chief of police and expressed my concerns to him, namely that enforcing seatbelts shouldn't be done through surprise checks. That's going to create fear and distrust. I know certainly for me, when I pulled up to the school, I had no idea what was going on. There was one sign, so if you didn't come in on the street where the sign was, you wouldn't know what was happening. I had to roll my windows down. The officer reached into the back of my vehicle to give one of my children a fist bump. I was in my pajamas, okay? Like, I don't feel unique in that. I met with other parents at our school. They also felt really surprised and caught off guard. I later learned that this was maybe like more of a normal practice before COVID. But I think we could have just done so much better with communication, right? Even if it's not letting people know exactly when the seatbelt check is going to be, like giving them like during this month, during this week. Also, here's some resources. CHI will do car seat checks, right? Like let's connect people in our schools to community resources and not just penalize them for not having their seatbelt on in the drop-off line. Because I'm also like, my kids don't always have their seatbelt on in the drop-off line. So in addition to that, during our school field day, there were lots of cars parked around. My children attend Newell School, so there's no parking lot. It's all street parking. And a code enforcement officer came up and started to write tickets for all the cars that were surrounding the school. Felt it was absolutely unnecessary, misuse of force, misuse of resources, and particularly, I drew you this nice little picture. This was the area of concern. So this is the east side of Newell Elementary. It has a blue curb that is marked as a loading or unloading zone. It also has one single handicapped stall that is actually like, you have a sidewalk and then it kind of slants up a little bit and then there's a fence and the stall kind of sits in between the sidewalk and the fence, if that makes sense. These two vehicles were parked on the very outer edges of this blue zone. We're not causing impairment to the handicap stall at all. Again, if you've tried to park at Newell Elementary, you know that it's super hard. But not only did this code enforcement officer write them tickets for parking in a handicap zone, or that was his intention, he also brought out his window tint and had the intention of going from car to car and checking the tint to see if it was at the legal limit. Again, school is not a place where families should be afraid to interact with law enforcement. It should be a place where, honestly, I go to the school, I ask for help, they connect me with law enforcement, right? Like, I don't understand the intention behind this, specifically Nebraska. Why it feels so important to me is the Nebraska Public Media recently put out an article that said ICE agents can make arrests at schools. Here's how Nebraska schools are reacting. Now, I do want to note, Grand Island did have a section that says they do not collect any information about immigration status. They would only do so through a subpoena. But what is your plan if they just show up? Do we have that plan? Have we had serious talks with law enforcement? I've talked with law enforcement officers. They're not recognizing the political climate right now that immigration and this presidency has caused. But I know it does. There are so many students and families at my school where English is a second language, where they're probably not all documented, where they don't have the confidence or the voice or the privilege that I have today to come up here and say, we need protected within our schools, we need plans for when we're faced with situations of unsafety. And so again, I just ask you to use your own power and privilege to think ahead, come up with protocols if there are ICE raids in our community. Come up with, the Multicultural Coalition has the orange folders where you can even think ahead of time of who's gonna take guardianship of a child if their parent is arrested and detained. Have we had those conversations as a district? It should be clear and loud and circulated and not reactive and hard. And quite honestly, no one has followed up with me on this. I sent 2 emails last May and no one has followed up. I was told you guys were gonna meet with Grand Island Police Department, that you'd be happy to share that conversation, and it hasn't. So here I am. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. Okay, item number 6, information items. I'm going to go to 6.1, summer programs with Dr. Summer Stevens.
Okay, let's see. It goes. There we go. Okay. And I'll make sure that Angela gets a copy of this. So tonight, really just more so that we make sure that everyone stays informed of what we did. Definitely there's a lot more information that we could share, lots of pictures, lots of testimonials, if you will, of different things that occurred, but I just want to make sure we could run through tonight, because I think one of the things on our minds will continue to be how we fund summer programming. And we just finished the summer, but we need to start thinking now about what we want to do, what needs to be in place coming next summer. We actually start thinking about it and start our planning actually in November, in December now. So just wanted to just share a few things. I'm not gonna read everything, but like I said, I'll make sure that Angela has it and she can make sure it's in all the materials. But I did want to say thank you. The 150 staff is actually probably pretty tight on numbers, probably closer to 200 when we think about all the different staff. I know that Oscar talked a little bit about the summer feeding when we talked about like how many kids came and ate. One of the things that I did notice and we talked a lot about was when some of the immigration conversations and some of the different things going on, not necessarily in Grand Island, but other places, started to make its way to a rise in the community. We started to see numbers go down in our kids that were coming to summer feedings, but we also saw that in our summer programs. So the programs are great. They continue to be great. They had great opportunities, but I know that we did have families that were concerned for a number of reasons, and so they may or may not have chosen to bring their children. Summer Strong is our Title I summer program. Chandra Myers and Maggie Mink can help with that. We had 161 students that represented all 8 of our Title I buildings. This year we held the activities at Star Elementary School in the morning. It has been held at West Lawn. But we held it at Star because of their wiring project, and then we also used Star as a feeding site. So there was morning kids, there was lunch, breakfast and lunch, and then the afternoon had power camp there. So we'll definitely have conversation about the benefits, if there were benefits or drawbacks to doing that. They had community time. They did a lot of STEM activities. They did a lot with literacy, lots of reading, writing. That was pretty involved. And they had 3 family nights, which they were really proud of. A welcome night. They had a pool night that they did at Island Oasis, and then they have Edgerton come as well. So they were really excited about that. Also, Power Camp, that's the afternoon. We fund that out of, so Title I funds the first part. Title IV right now is where we fund Power Camp out of. Eric Streck and Hannah Luber had about 225 students originally, and then the numbers kind of went down to between 150, 180 in the subsequent weeks. They did rotation activities, so kids could do different activities throughout the course of the weeks. And then they also had staycations, which they had local businesses actually come to school versus taking a field trip out to somewhere else. And then they also had the Nowhere BMX came out and did kind of a stunt show and had a speech for kids. The summer program at Howard, Sydney Hespy organized that, and it had about 29 students in grades K through 2. They had focus on reading and math standards throughout those morning sessions, and again, getting kids up to speed, worked really hard. Both, all of the staff worked to connect with L4L and their staff with language arts and math and kind of what our numbers look like. And the program that's at Howard and the program that's down here just a little ways that's at Dodge, those are just for Howard or Dodge students. But they focus in on the kids at their schools, and they use their Title I funding for that. The summer EL program this year was held at Stolly Park Elementary, and Whitney Flower was the coordinator, and Dr. Luas helped. They had about 120 students. Same thing that earlier talked about the numbers decreasing a little bit after the first week. But the highlight really for that program this year, they never done it before, but they had leaders and learners. And the leaders were the 6th through 12th grade English learner students, and then the K through 5 students were the learners. And the leaders and learners met every day, and they did a math activity, a reading activity, or a craft. But the focus was in on the older students, the leaders, really intentionally working on their English development. And they actually planned for it the day before with their teachers. And then they participated in the activities throughout. So that took place the entire time. They also held community circle, and they just really worked hard on the English vocabulary and academic vocabulary. Extended school year, that's for our students that have IEPs. We had 29 elementary kids that we had working over at Shoemaker, and then 12 that was held at Gish, and that included the middle and high school kids. And they were working on their specialized instruction, and Morgan Wheeler and Molly Elge were the two coordinators for that. As I mentioned earlier, the Dodge program, Alicia Rice organized that. They had about 50 students, K4. They took kind of, again, focus on where kids had performed and what they needed to work on. So they worked on language arts and math, as well as social emotional learning and STEAM activities. We have a grant that we received last year from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Howard and Dodge both will be working with them for after-school programming. And so they were able to take part a little bit with this. And so they actually will support a lot of STEAM activities I think they're going to do 2 days at each school after school. And the main crux of the staffing is actually going to be student workers, high school students that they'll bring in. And then they'll work to tie to the science the kids are doing in the classroom. So they got kind of a preview of that. Middle school, we did not have quite the same programming as we have had. I think we've kind of talked about it. We had been funding the academies for the middle school, summer schools, funding those through the ESSER grant that we had from COVID. And as that money kind of went to a smaller amount, we've continued to take our poverty money during the school year and make sure we can bus kids that we can bus and have opportunities throughout for them as well. But the middle school hosted 2 camps. One was called Grit Robotics Camp. That's Alex Chemnitz ran that. And they did a lot of activities. As you can see, they engineered things. They did problem solving. They worked on coding. They worked with a 3D printer. And they actually utilized, in that program, we paid high school students to come and be the counselors or the mentors to work with Mr. Chemnitz on that. So that was a 4-day camp at Gish. And then at the same time, we did hold a middle school art camp. We had about 22 students registered, and we had 12 that came. And they worked on just creating personalized books and worked on art techniques during that time. And John Perry and Tatiana Young, who are middle school teachers, helped facilitate that, but it was held at Gish. And one of the things that we did, so those two camps, for example, extended school year, and then now with GIPS credit recovery also, we worked hard to try to have a food site at every place that we had a summer program, the best we could. So Shoemaker was a summer feeding site, had a summer program. Star summer feeding site as well as a programming. Dodge and Howard had summer feeding as well as GISH. So I think it's something we'll continue to look at to maximize the number of students participating, so we can capture all of those kids who come so that they get their breakfast and lunch. GISH credit recovery this year, Joe Wood was the facilitator of that. We had 176 students. About 36 of those had been ninth graders who needed to earn credits back. Through that time, they earned 1,280 credits. And one of the differences to this year too is that they provided live math instruction instead of just taking the Admentum course online. They taught Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 in person to kids who were taking that class. So we think that was a good opportunity as well. This was the inaugural year of Jumpstart 9. Jared Bombeck and Calvin Hubbard organized it, and it sounds like something they've had in the works for a while, because when Calvin asked me about it, he's like, let me go get the stuff from the files. So they had all this stuff. They had a really great idea. They wanted to do some barbecues and then have the kids show up on the fourth day, and just through logistics and whatnot, the fourth day is the day that happened, and there was about 155 of the new incoming ninth graders came and took part in the morning of activities, becoming familiar with school, with the staff, and then they had a lunch together. So that was great. We're excited about what can come next. How can we really make that impactful? And then Jumpstart 6 is kind of a program, a signature program that we've had. And Shannon Ripp, Jamie Finnessy, and Katie Wilkinson from those three schools help organize throughout their school with their staff. And the numbers there, you can see Barr started with 127 students on the two-day event, Walnut with 154, and Westridge with 108. So we're happy with those numbers. And there they took part in activities. They ate breakfast, they ate lunch, and just got kind of the feel of the day. And I'd like to say that it probably helped some, but I did visit all three middle schools yesterday, and there was still a lot of glossy eyes / what the heck am I doing here? However, it just gives them a much better chance to feel like, hey, I know where I'm going when they're taking me down that hall, and just more confident, and it's a great start. So summer programming wise, we're going to continue to ask for your support and ways to find funding to get as much as we can. Get out to the state fair. I'm hopeful that through some of these there will be some state fair projects out there in the art, and we just, again, grateful for all of the staff. We couldn't do it without all of the numerous staff that participate, from our nurses, our healthcare staff, to the cafeteria staff, to the secretaries, counselors, teachers, paraprofessionals, and then those from Holiday that drive kids on which programs have that. So if you have any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, we'll make sure you get this. Okay.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you for this update. I was writing out a lot of it seems like our programs have expanded in a sense, maybe not. Could you talk more about that? Like, have we offered the same level of programming before in past summers? And then it's awesome to get 150 staff kind of involved throughout the summer months. So after that first question, just is programming level the same as other years before or not? And funding, I saw that one of them was Title I. Where does the funding come from all the other ones?
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of expansion, obviously I haven't been here as long. I kind of came in the summer, the first year, and then in last year. I would say that kind of the way that we did the EL programming, I guess, that was a little different and probably expanded to some degree. But the other, Howard and Dodge, those are schools that have had summer programming, and Lincoln School has had summer programming in the past, was not able to, they chose not to do that this past summer. Connecrum actually thought about having it, and Lincoln stopped having it for this summer. I think that's something that they'll continue to look at. When they look at their whole pot of Title I funds, they try to determine what's the best use of these funds. The Jumpstart 9 was new. We've had Jumpstart 6, but a big hole, and we really talked about it, was that middle school programming in the summer. So when they were thinking about it, we used to do, I'm going to call it more traditional middle school program, which was working on English and math. reading and math skills. They found that that really started to wane the number of students, the kinds of activities they were doing. So they made that shift over to last year, specifically in the year prior, they had those more of academies where they were doing more project-based learning, you know, and like cross-curricular kinds of learning opportunities. And so they also then found, we're still not sure, besides giving kids a great place to go, which is awesome. We had a little over 50 kids last year at Walnut. We had about 13 at Westridge and maybe about that same number at Barr last year. So when the group was talking about how do we best spend money across the board with what we have, how do we do that in a, I'm going to say, responsible yet effective fashion? So they really said, let's go back to the drawing board and think about, so we'll start early, like what might make sense for middle schoolers, because we want to keep them involved and keep them busy. Now, the one thing I didn't mention on here is all of the middle school and high school like camps that they have for sports activities. High school puts those on. Middle school had summer weights still and had some other activities going on. So keeping the middle schoolers active is really important. And I think that's the kind of things we've seen kind of happening with there. So, and again, even with those summer sports camps, we had those opportunities always to, over the last few years, to use that ESSER money, and now we don't have that either. The last thing that was not utilized this last summer was we had a grant with Nebraska Children and Families that was called Beyond School Bells, and we had it during the school year and during the summer. And at West Lawn, they had run an afternoon program kind of parallel to the Power Camp, and they this summer did not choose to run that camp. So, but funding wise, again, Title I for Summer Strong, Power Camp comes out of Title IV right now. The summer programs at Howard and Dodge, of course, are Title. The EL program, and Virgil might have to help me, if it came out of Poverty and EL maybe, or just Title III? Okay, it came from the LEP funds. The middle school robotics and art camp came out of Title IV this year. The credit recovery came out of poverty funds, and as did the Jumpstart 9 came out of poverty funds, and L4L budget actually budgeted for the Jumpstart 6 this year.
Ms. Albers.
So it's disheartening that the numbers decreased as fear in the community kind of increased as well. So just upon reflection from that, because of course it's kind of new territory to have these summer programs and then have the numbers affected, do you feel like there's anything else the school could have done to support the students and support their families to try to get them to school? I mean, we're talking about feeding kids and talking about teaching kids. So I'm just curious about that.
And I will tell you specifically in the Title I in Summer Strong in Power Camp, and specifically in the EL program that we had at Stolly Park, they actually made calls and visits to homes to talk about school being one of the safest places you can be, and that we wanted them to come and learn and have meals and that sort of thing. So they worked really hard on doing that. And most of these things, like I said, took place in June. But the staff did a phenomenal job of the reaching out and connecting and utilizing our staff effectively to try to reach families. And those that did not want to come or come out, the staff, especially we had the folks that worked for FIT over the summer and others really connecting at their homes too to make sure they had what they needed. So they missed out on the programming, which was understandable, but trying to continue to work. And as you know, we have an extensive plan for any time with immigration. We worked really hard on that last year. We've presented it to you all. Staff knows what to do, and they know the protocols of what to do. We're prepared if in the event any student needs support through either some sort of supervision and or just the family support needed. And so we actually utilized all those same protocols, and we're prepared that way over the course of the summer. Our partnership with the Multicultural Coalition to make sure that they had the resources they need to support families and just make sure that we were all aware. We did a lot of communicating. So I was proud of the staff for doing that. And again, you know, people make choices, and I appreciate that too, that they have to do that for their families and for themselves. Yep.
Anyone else? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 6.2, the student handbook.
Oh, that's me too. Let me grab it.
Okay.
Let me get that. I don't have a visual for that per se, but, okay. Didn't realize it was right up. Okay, so as you recall, last month, for the student handbook, we had a number of, changes, that we would make, and can you actually pull it up for me? Just the file that was on the board book? That was in there, right, Angela? Okay, it looks like this. Okay. So I'm not gonna cover everything that's in here. We've made the first adjustments from the July meeting, and then some of these are the things that bring it forward tonight. And we actually won't be approving the handbook until after you look at the policies, because some of those policies are actually included in the handbook, and the changes that are made tonight will be impacted. So we made the adjustment to the adult meat, breakfast, and lunch price, is in there. For excessive absenteeism, as you know, we're gonna be working on that as a district goal for our strategic plan. And so we did want to put inside of that section, what our goal was, right? That our district's goal is to strive for 90% of our students in Grand Island Public Schools to be present 95% of the school days. So again, to equate to that, that's about missing no more than 8 days of school. The district supports all students and families as they work through various challenges that make attending school difficult at times, and asks families to take advantage of these supports and to be part of the process. This next part also is something that we changed in there, because one of those challenges we typically have is we have a section, and until we bring that policy forward, it probably is part of the goal work, is it lists all of the attendance codes, and then it says exempt, excused, unexcused. So what we know about that, though, is, like, Mr. Barsonis could give me an excuse of why his child wasn't at school, and we've called that excused. But there isn't any really excused absences, even with the state law around being able to have a medical note to change it to medical. So we have two kind of things happening. We have the state and national chronic absenteeism numbers that we report for state and federal reporting. And then we also have the number that's in the law about the expectation of children being present in school. And then at 20 absences, the potential that the county can become involved to support families. So we have kind of two different numbers. But in all of those, really nothing's excused except school activities or anything that we deem in school is like excusing you for. We excuse for court appearances that can't be at another time. Sometimes we have families that travel to Omaha, Lincoln, etc. But also sometimes kids need to go home or just aren't present, and admin can excuse those. Those are used a lot more rarely. College visit, we want kids to go do that, so it counts in a similar way to school activity. Those are really the only things that don't count towards these numbers. So we wanted to just be clear, because we're never clear, and people say, but it says excused. And in fact, it does. But I wanted to try to be clearer, so the exempt ones are the ones that don't count against you, right? So if you have anything but exempt, it's gonna count as 1, 2, 3, even medical. And again, it is not a gotcha. It's a goal around being aware of what's happening. I would argue that probably half of our families have no idea how many days their child actually misses, because they're not like counting it and on parent view all the time. And the reality is, it's more of an awareness, like being at school matters. I remember we were talking about like why you should be at school when we were doing that excessive absenteeism policy. That was probably my first year here. And we talked a lot about like, are we saying that it's not imperative that you're at school? We took out one section, and it is imperative. So we were just trying to, I'm gonna say, make it clearer. So if you have 17 absences not listed as exempt, you are chronically absent. So you can only miss 16.7 days of school. And then when you hit 17, you'll be chronically absent. So we're working on reducing those numbers. Us, the state of Nebraska, the entire country is working on that. That's for the chronic absenteeism number. The 20 days is really more around the excessive absences, which is the policy which applies to the state law around being present in school. And if you miss more than 20 days, other entities potentially getting involved. So we did put in here, we've changed, we're at the fifth, after the fifth absence, staff will communicate in writing with families about the importance of attending. We're trying to keep those letters to more of the positive, to like the impact that it has if you miss some of those pieces. And then after the 10th absence is when we're asking the attendance plans that are required by law to be approached to use to be in place. The one thing to remember is attendance plans are not required by parents. Parents don't have to come and collaborate with you on them. So, but we're going to put them in place and keep working on it. But that's really important to us, and I think you'll see a lot of things regarding attendance come up over the next couple of years now. And then down later in the page, this is where we were just talking about the 20 absences that the school may report to the county attorney of the county in which the person having control of student resides. And it's just, I wanted to make sure that that it would show still that we will alert families. And the part that I added specifically was in tardies. At elementary school, if you have 7 tardies, we count that as an absence when we were like adding up time. Synergy adds up time for so when you miss school, you miss that point whatever, if you miss half a day. But those add up, and kids miss all kinds of different amounts of time because of tardies as well. And so we wanted to make sure it was clear. Probably one of our biggest problems at elementary school is tardiness. And we know there's a number of factors for that. So we just wanted to make it clear that we're counting tardies. And not that we're not counting them at middle and high school, we're trying to focus on getting kids to school. And then we have some other strategies to work on tardies. But at elementary, we're trying to curb that. So that's the change there. Any questions about that section? Just trying to be clearer. The forms of school discipline, that just comes from some of the new language. That's just a section to put on top of that particular, of the wording in the handbook. The dress code policy, page 26 of the handbook, 27, harassment and bullying. I'm going to ask to be changed to bullying and harassment to match the policy. The non-discrimination notice, parental access to educational practices, those will fall into there, and we'll take the components. Our attorney has said that we don't have to put the whole policy in there, so we may just shorten it, or we may continue to just put the whole policy in for this year, kind of as it's written, so people have access to it. But once the vote happens tonight, we'll be able to make those changes. So I don't want to call them out in here in case you vote differently or change something. The electronic device voluntary protection plan, that's where we have that you can sign up for that. I just put in there, the addition to that is how you can pay for it and using My School Bucks, and to give people directions on how to do it so it's in a permanent place so they know where to go. The next section is the academic expectations for participants. Now, Mr. Fisher, have you guys talked about that in like small group or anything? Okay, so this right now, and excuse the font difference, Kelly Mayhew takes this all and makes it fancy for me and puts it in the handbook, right? But this is the exact criteria that the high school is trying out this year for academic eligibility to be able to play in games. And so we just put the Grand Island Senior High School academic expectations here is listed in that section. This is the same section in the handbook that talks about attendance, and it talks about disciplinary things for people that are participating in activities. Were there any questions about this part?
See none.
Oh, yep.
Mr. Hawley.
If I'm not mistaken, I think when I read through this, and it talks about ineligibility based on grades, right? But the students who are ineligible can still travel with the team at the discretion of the coaches. Does that sound accurate?
Does that sound accurate, Mr. Fisher? I think it depends.
The administration.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out why we would do that. So if we have students who are failing courses, too many courses to compete, and realistically the only excused absence is a sporting event, but you're failing, why would we even leave that I would think that we'd want to change that to be, if you're failing, you're not traveling with the team. But that's just my take.
And I think if you want to answer it, I mean, ultimately what I remember us talking through was sometimes there's games at night, they're going to things. So I'll let Mr. Fisher speak to it. He's been working more with the athletic department.
And I agree, and maybe Matt, real quick, to speak to your point, you're right, some of them are at night, but I still think that sports is a privilege. If we've lost that privilege throughout the week because we're not doing what we need to do in the classroom, then still traveling with the team is rewarding. I don't know if it's bad behavior or what that technical terminology would be.
And I think what Dr. Stevens said is right. First of all, if it was something that was going to force them to miss school, they're probably not going on that for sure. But the situation that I think we talked a little bit about was that this is a Sunday to Sunday rule where by the Friday before that Sunday, somebody could have got their grades up, have done everything that they were expected to do, did what they needed to do, and then there might be a situation where it made sense if they had done all those things to allow them. And that's why that provision is in there, that they could travel with the team if the coach and the administration decided that that was appropriate.
So case by case basis, basically.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, though. And again, we're, it's one of those when you're not doing something and to start doing something, you take that chance of like, what's the right steps to take. So we're going to start employing it and learn from it.
And I think that's an important point right there, is this is not something that we're looking at in policy right now, because we really felt like it needed to have the kinks worked out of it, basically. And so we recognize that there's probably some things that we're going to discover as we move through this year that are going to make us say, I think we need to adjust that. And ultimately, this is, something that we would probably want to put into policy. But I think that this is kind of a pilot year, and we felt like before we put it in as a policy, it would make sense for us just to put it in as part of our handbook and work some of those issues that might come up out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And just the last piece is there, I just wanted to share the page 57 and 58, 59. Those are in the section at the back. Corey and I talked a little bit about, like, should we take out that whole one-to-one computer use handbook section? And since we hadn't gone all the way through it, those two pieces are earlier in the handbook, those two items. So we're taking them out of there. And then sexual harassment, Title IX, is at the very end for some reason. So I just moved it up in front of that one-to-one computing handbook. And hopefully we'll take out all the thes where it's appropriate for the Grand Island Public Schools.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Stevens. Item 6.3, Nebraska Statute 793405. Mr. Harden.
One of the more exciting statutes, may I add. The statute revolves around the Property Tax Request Authority. And so if you would be so kind to direct your attention towards the Property Tax Request Authority certification attached document to the agenda item. It's the first agenda item. And so based on that statute, you can see the Nebraska Department of Education sends each school district basically snapshot of what the rules say that you can have as a maximum revenue cap. And so if you kind of look at the middle of the page, you'll see the total revenue cap listed right there at $140,356,285. So if we would not pass the resolution that'll be in front of you as an action item later this evening, we would be limited to that as our total revenue. And so the issue is then they take into account other revenue streams to then lower that, and then that basically becomes your levy cap. And so those other revenue streams are other non-property tax receipts, special ed reimbursements from the state, TIOSA, and then unused property tax authority that gets added back. So if you don't use prior years, you do get that ability to go after that. So as kind of a summary then, the board with a 70% majority vote can access an additional 5%. That additional 5%, I think I have it here on my spreadsheet somewhere, is about $6.7 million worth of additional property tax request authority. And so as you may remember from previous board work, Grand Island Public Schools uses the budget maximization theory, and so we maximize all the limits that we are exposed to, and then we only use what we need to operate the district to achieve our educational goals for our students. And so past practice has been, since this was initiated, is to go ahead and approve this as a kind of a reference point, the 23-24 school year. We increased that amount by 5.8 million and used none of it. We just gave the maximization, and again, we only used what we needed. The next year, or the 24-25 year that runs through August 31st, we did an additional $6.1 million, but we did use 1.3 million of that. And then this year, of course, we won't know. We don't have valuation yet for this year, and so we haven't adopted our budget. So we don't know how much, if any. And of course, it is both the general fund and the special building fund that are exposed to these limits. The bond fund and qualified fund are not under these limits. So the additional 5% resolution that you'll be asked to pass an action item later this evening would be a resolution that would authorize access to $6,784,181 worth of additional tax request authority. It does not set the levy, it does not set the taxation, it just gives us access to use it if we need it. So with that, I would conclude my comments.
So Virgil, Mr. Fisher and I talked about this previously, but last year 80 schools approved to do this same type of a vote, right? 80-something school districts in Nebraska, and only, was it 3 schools got into the additional funds? Do you know that?
I don't have the statewide totals, no. I just have Grand Island Public Schools information.
So the point being, though, that the majority of school districts probably in Nebraska are doing this just as a safety net, with the thought that if something happens and they need to access those funds, they have that ability. Of course, GIPS is doing the same thing, but with the thought being that we wouldn't use that.
Well, I guess I don't know about the thought, but I would say that we give ourselves the opportunity if needed, but we only will use it if we need it. And so I don't know what a good analogy is, but you know, what I can tell you is from experience, Grand Island Public Schools has been hurt in the past when they have not acted in that manner. Take you back to the 1990s era and the budget limitations, where the board could have done an additional 1% budget authority. And at that time, there was a period of 14 years that the program ran. The first 7 years, they did not take that. And so they literally were having like a compounded negative effect on their budget, that it could have grown, and because they didn't take that, it was gone forever. And future boards then could never access that. And it really was part of the foundation of why the GIPS participated in the lawsuit against the state, because there was those draconian type measures that weren't maybe fully understood at the time. And so I think we better understand the fact that our landscape is controlled to some extent, obviously, by the legislature. They set the rules, so we're gonna open the window as far as we can, but then only open it up, or only use that window opening as much as we need, kind of thing. So, yep.
Any other questions? None. Well, thank you, Mr. Harden. Item 6.4.1, certified staff leave of absence, sick, bereavement, and personal emergency. Mr. Matt Fisher.
Okay, if you recall, a couple months ago, we had made the decision that we were going to put those action items involving policies that were only around those policies that included either no revisions or only revisions of grammar, such as crossing out the thes. We felt like that was a better use of the board's time to put those in the consent agenda. Obviously, we have the same situation when we're talking about the information items for policies, but they really don't work in a consent agenda, because in the consent agenda, we're actually approving those. So as the policy committee discussed this, basically came to the recommendation that they would make to the board that when we have those policies that either have no revisions or simple grammatical revisions where there's no substantial, there we go, that's the right word, substantial change to what's actually happening with the policy. It really doesn't change what the intent and the action of the policy would be. That when we do those in information, that we would just share with the board that these are policies that would only have grammar changes and not spend time going through those. So that is the recommendation of the policy committee, and so I guess if the board is comfortable with that, that's the action that we would follow. So that being the case, actually 641, 642, 643, 644, and 646 are all policies that really only have very minor grammatical changes to them. So unless some board member wants us to go through those, we will pass on going through those. The one that does have a substantial change is 645, which is policy 6335, and we'll take a look at this one. Actually, there's not a whole lot to look at here because the recommendation with this policy is substantial, but the recommendation is that we eliminate this policy. The reason being is that this policy is covered, the exact same language is included in this, this policy under another one of our policies. I think it's 6235. Actually has all of this information in it. And so the recommendation would be not to have a redundant policy, and so therefore to eliminate 6335. Questions about that?
Seeing none.
If not, that covers all of the information items that we have on policy this month.
Okay, item number 7.1 under action items is transportation routes for 2025-26 school year. And I have down here that Mr. Virgil Harden is supposed to speak on that.
He's right here. Virgil? You want to speak about transportation, or you want me to?
Gosh, my leg cramped.
Yep, we're up already. They're flying fast.
Lisa, I can't see your light. Okay.
Sorry about that. I was talking to a colleague about another item, so. Okay. All right, I'll direct your attention to the transportation routes fiscal year 25-26 document that's attached to this agenda item, and so this is for action. We have a multi-year agreement with Holiday Express for transportation services. As a matter of that process, we can annually either add or take away the different contracts and routes that we want to be involved with. And so for the 25-26 school year, you can see the list there. There are no major changes, unlike last year where you remember we had a number of routes that were ending, AM, PM routes and all that, so there's a major reduction. This year, there's a 2% increase overall across the board that's accounted for in the contract, and then we just had some minor changes on some, I call them looping routes, specifically between senior high and CPI, and then, and I believe, Summer, was there an additional fit route that we added? Or maybe we just added it to the list? It's the bottom line.
We had it last year for.
We had it, but it's listed here, but there's no dollar amount because we pay for it out of a different funding source. And so I just wanted this list to be as complete as possible. So that's why you see one line item. It's not a calculation or anything. And so routine business from the standpoint of renewing the contract, and it's a service that we can basically contract at will. So with that, I would conclude my comments.
Any questions for Mr. Harden? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the transportation routes for 2025-26.
I make a motion to approve transportation routes for 25-26 school year as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. May proceed, discussion, excuse me. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Item 7.2, Nebraska Statute 793405. Mr. Harden.
Still one of the more exciting statutes on the books. The attachment that I want to draw your attention to for the action item is the actual resolution itself. It's a standard language that we have now used for the last year and then now for this next school year. And it basically just states that you're giving the administration to act on the additional 5% if and when needed by passing this resolution. So with that,
Any questions for Mr. Harden? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the property tax authorization resolution.
I make a motion to approve the property tax authorization resolution as presented.
Second by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. We're on here to item number 7.3.1 under policy of 1310 non-discrimination.
Okay, this is the first of several policies that go back to the discussion that we had last month around the language, specifically with protective hairstyles. This policy came up because there was a change in the legislation that required us to include military as well as veteran status. And at the time that we were discussing that, the committee, and doing what we have been doing in many policies, looked at where, are there things here that, are more descriptive than what would normally be in a policy. Policies typically are written broadly, and then the prescriptive side of that is typically enacted in the procedures. So as we looked at the protective hairstyles that were listed there, the committee discussed it and felt like, this is one of those places where, this is more prescriptive than what you would normally have in policy. So that's the reason, as we looked at this policy, and other policies that have the same language in it, we made the recommendation a month ago that we consider removing that descriptive language. So, following the discussion that we had last month, went back, did some research on where that language is coming from. So, just as a quick review, when we look back at all of our current policies around discrimination and bullying, harassment, there are places in our policies that language exists. We have other policies where that language does not exist. And so there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, and obviously one of the things that we want to do for sure is be consistent in the language. And so that was one of the things that came to light as we went through this. One of the other things that we're getting some conflicting messages about what our language should be in the policies that we got from the attorney this year. Basically, the language was abbreviated to, when we talk about race, simply saying including skin color, hair texture, and protective hairstyles, without listing the specific hairstyles. So that was the language that we got from our school attorney. Then we also have the language that we got as part of the Nebraska Department of Education model policy, and this is the language from the model policy. In one place they talk about natural and protective hairstyles, but then they do go on to define the protective hairstyles. And so again, you know, that's a little bit different than what our attorney is giving us, but that was the policy that was put in place by NDE as a model policy that schools could adopt. The requirement from the statute was that we adopt a policy, either the model policy or a policy that was similar in the intent. And so if you go to the statute, which is 79-2, 159 from 2023 legislative session, that does list that natural and protective hairstyles with all of the specifics and with the language, but could include but are not limited to. And it lists all of those different hairstyles then. So that's what the statute actually presents. Now, as we're looking at that and going back and looking at our policies, we actually had policies with this language in them that are older than 2023. So, you know, went back a little bit further to see where that language was coming from. And actually the language really comes from, and it started out with federal legislation, but ultimately became the Nebraska Fair Employment Practice, where they started listing protective hairstyles and they named some specifics. Now, obviously the list that was in this 2021 statute is much shorter than the list that's in the 2023 statute. So that's kind of the background on where the language comes from. Along with that research, also had the opportunity to visit with our building leaders and just ask them specifically, do you feel as those people that are administering these policies that it is helpful to have this specific language in? And the response we got to that was yes. They felt like it was helpful to them in administering the policy to have the specific hairstyles listed. So that's kind of the background on, you know, where we've been, a little bit of the research behind where the language is coming from. Sitting down with our policy committee then and looking at this, we also, I guess one other piece of documentation, and I think all of you have a copy of this. Mrs. Albers had the opportunity to visit with one of our state senators around the topic, and she shared some information, part of which was the model policy from NDE, but then also some just kind of background material around where the language and why that language is important to include from the perspective of you know, that group that presented that information. So based on the information that we collected, the recommendation from the policy committee was to go ahead and include with that protective hairstyles that language that was the same as what was in the NDE model policy. So that would be simply, as you see highlighted in yellow there, we're going to include skin color and protective hairstyles, which could include, but are not limited to, braids, locks, twists, tight knots, curls, cornrows, bantu knots, afros, weaves, wigs, and head wraps. Weaves and wigs were additional hairstyles that were added in the NDE policy that were not in our previous policies. So that's the recommendation for both this policy and the other policies that contain this language. Other than that, I think the other things that are included in this non-discrimination policy, obviously the military reference, and I think there's several places where that military reference, no, maybe it's not this policy, it's the other policy. Oh, here it is. Again, that language is there, and the military and veteran language is there further on, and seems like there was another place maybe where that shows up. Nope, I think that's it. So those are the only real changes to this policy, are just making sure that that language is the same as what it is in the NDE model policy, and then adding that military reference. Questions?
Mr. Hawley.
Mr. Fisher, on page 4, 1310.1, Administrative Procedures for Policies, in the first paragraph where we have all of our non-discrimination based off of criteria, we don't have military and veteran status in that paragraph. Should we?
Yes, we should.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Fisher? At this point, I would entertain a motion. Oh, yep, sure.
Can we go ahead and make a motion to approve this based on,
As revised.
as revised? Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion now to accept the policy of non-discrimination.
I make a motion to approve policy 1310, non-discrimination, as revised.
Second by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Discussion? Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
All right. So moving on to 1311, which deals with bullying and harassment. And again, the changes are really the same. Making sure that we have that model language, and then also the military and veteran status. Hopefully we got it in all of the right places this time. The here and there we get to correct. Otherwise, I think that's it. Questions on that one?
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 1311, bullying and harassment as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, 4417, capital asset management. There's really only one simple change in this one. There is a place in there where the description of a capital project changes from $5,000 to $10,000. We did not include this in the consent agenda though, because we felt like changing from 5 to 10 was a substantial change, so we felt like the board should have that in front of them.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Can you speak as to why that increase was made? And I'm assuming due to costs that are associated with some of that stuff.
Yeah, that was just basically as the cost of everything has gone up. 5,000 is a pretty low ceiling. The reality is 10,000 is a pretty low ceiling for getting much of anything done anymore. But yeah, that's why it moved up.
Any further questions? At this time, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 4417, capital asset management as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 5321, safe driving record standards for drivers. This was a new policy that was presented by our attorney to again align with legislative procedures, and this was entirely new. We did not have a policy along these lines, so this is entirely a new policy, and basically it is what the attorney presented us. Questions about any language that's in there or anything?
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 5321, safe driving record standard for drivers as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 5330, foster care student transportation, again, was a policy that we did not have, but a policy that was recommended to us by our attorney that we should have to align with legislative procedures. The nice thing about this policy is it does match what we were already doing in terms of our foster care student transportation, so it doesn't force us to change anything.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Mr. Hawley?
I think it's the third paragraph, down under costs. I just thought this was a strangely worded statement. It's the last sentence. It says, if the district and DHHS are unable to agree on a transportation plan, the district and DHHS will work together to resolve any differences. Basically meaning if you can't agree, you're going to work together to agree.
Yes.
How do you, I guess, quantify that at the end? Like, how do we come to a resolution? Do you understand the question I'm asking?
I do understand the question you're asking. Ultimately, here's the good part about this is that DHHS is responsible for paying for the cost of the transportation. So really when you're talking about that, what they're really talking about is, well, if it makes sense for the district that has already got something running that would easily be able to pick up those students in foster care, and they would just do it, or so again there's give and take in it, but in terms of the statement, yeah, it says that you would go back to which basically in the end would be the school district saying, no, you're going to pay for it.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 5330, foster care student transportation as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 6215, bullying and harassment. This is our staff policy around that. And again, the policy is there because we had to add the military and veteran status, but as we were looking at it, then we wanted to make sure that the language matched. So in that first part, there is that language around protective hairstyles where they're defined. Now, if you look further down in the policy, the second time it's listed, and again, going back to thinking about the NDE model policy, in some places they listed it all out, in some places they didn't. So again, as the policy committee reviewed it, they didn't necessarily think it needed to be repeated every place that would show up. So it's there at the beginning in the general statement of the policy, and then later on here, in the definition and examples, again, the full listing of the different hairstyles would be included in that definition.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve policy 6215, bullying and harassment staff as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 6233 is a drug-free school and community policy that's also part of our staff policies. As we look down through this one, nothing really changed in that initial policy, but then there is sub-policies that are attached to this. The administrative procedures, again, they're administrative procedures, so they really don't belong in policy, and in the policy that we got from the attorney, they were not included, so we felt like they should not be included here either. But then when you get down here a little ways, there is another sub-policy, which are controlled substance and alcohol use and testing. That was included in the attorney's policy, so we felt like should stay in here. And then when you get to the end of this, there were some new additions that the attorney included in the things that were required. Questions around that?
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 6233, drug-free school and community for staff as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 7460, programs for gifted learners. Again, this was based on legislative action. The attorney wanted us to change some of the language. And so you'll see in there are a couple of places where the language is changed. Old language is struck and new language replaces it. The overall intent and the way that we administer our gifted programs really does not require any change. So it's just a change in language.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 7460, programs for gifted learners as presented.
Second by Mr. Garcia Mendez. May discussion? May proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Policy 8220, admission of resident students. The first part of this, there is no change there. There was a section on enrollment of expelled students. Now, this section actually was contained in another policy. Really felt like that was not necessarily the correct place for it. Felt like it really belonged in this admission because it is dealing with admission of what would be resident students. And so that was in there. That was just moved from another policy. And then the military families piece was legislatively mandated. And so that military families piece is the language that we got from the attorney to bring us in line with that mandate.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 8220, admission of resident students as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Policy 8340 on part-time enrollment. Again, legislatively, there were some changes in the guidelines for this. Basically, really deals with homeschool students, private school students. The change that the legislature enacted was basically to allow students that were homeschooled or in private schools that wanted to participate in a particular activity that their home district did not offer, gave them the opportunity to go to other districts that might offer that activity. And so the language that the attorney put in place for us to add to our policy was simply that non-resident students may only be admitted on a part-time basis or permitted to participate in a school-sponsored extracurricular activity when required by law. So really, again, very broad, but we would look at each situation. It's pretty intricate because it talks about, okay, is this available in your home school district? And what is the next contiguous district where this would be available? So there's a number in tight rules that go around this. And so I think having the statement just simply as required by law. Because the reality would be if we had a situation like this, we're probably going to consult our attorney and have the attorney sort out what is required by law. And so anyhow, that's the language that's there. The second part of that is, and this is a nice thing that the legislature added this year. Previously, you know, we were required to allow homeschooled or private schooled students that were part of our district to participate if they were enrolled for at least 5 credits. Didn't say what semester they had to be enrolled. So you could enroll in a fall semester and participate in a spring sport. And so the legislature did tighten that up and says that in this case, the semester in which the student participates in the extracurricular activity is where they have to be enrolled. So a move in a good direction there, I think.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Mr. Hawley?
Going back to the conversation we had a little bit ago about the new procedural stuff in the student handbook surrounding participation in athletic events. Students, and I don't know how often this is happening, but a student from a different district that may be coming here for a semester to participate, do we have anything in place where we can work with that school on what their grades look like to hold them to the same standard as our students?
Well, there isn't anything in what we've got in place right now, but again, that might be one of those addendums that if we had that situation, we would want, you know, I think we would want to hold them to the same standard that we would hold our own students to. Now, obviously, they're going to have one class that they're taking here, but the ineligibility policy says they have to be failing more than one.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we would expect that there was a sharing of information from whatever their home district was, that now, homeschool student, you know, how tight
Right.
their grading is, you know, you never know. But again, I think we could, you know, on a case-by-case basis say, okay, this is what we would like to have from you. We need a weekly grade report. And if you can't produce that grade report, then, you know, we're going to treat them as ineligible. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that could come out, but we don't have anything in the existing policy. We don't have a lot of students that, you know,
Right.
that fit into this, but we could have more. You know, obviously this opened the door to some opportunities for, you know, students coming from other districts that could end up here because we obviously have activities a lot of districts don't have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any further questions? I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to approve policy 8340, part-time enrollment as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 8430, student dress code and grooming. Actually, based on what is in the model policy, we would propose changing the name of this policy to from student appearance to student dress code and grooming. That first statement that's there was provided by the attorney, and it does align with the language that's in the NDE model policy. And then as you go through this, there are several changes, again, that would align our existing policy with the model policy. And really that's where those changes are. That's what that was to align our policy with the model policy. So, again, the language around the protective hairstyles is included there, as well as a number of other things that are spelled out in that model policy that we've added to our policy.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 8430, student dress code and grooming as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 8450, student discipline. Again, there are a couple of things that came out of some legislative action that required us to make some modifications to our discipline policy. Again, our discipline policy is pretty spelled out in the policy, and I think that's been a very useful tool for our administrators to be able to have violations and a minimum, maximum sort of penalties listed, and so we wanted to leave that in there. But there was language, again, around the appearance, a language about no student shall be disproportionately affected by a dress code or grooming policy enforcement because of the student's gender, race, color, religion, disability, or national origin. That language was to be included in our policy, so this was the area that we felt like that should be. And there was also a statement that dealt with deep fakes, obscene, lewd, public indecency behavior, and that would also include deep fakes or other computer-generated images. So again, there have been situations where obviously there were obscene, lewd images that were created that were fakes. And so actually the legislature enacted basically penalties for the deep fakes, so it made sense for us to have that included in our policy, and that was again part of the attorney's recommendations that we include that in the policy.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you. In terms of that, like deep fakes, is there any, I guess, training or learning opportunity for students or staff to engage in? As you know, like this artificial intelligence, as it continues to be more common and students use it, staff use it, is there any training or, I guess, learning that students participate in currently and staff the same?
Well, in our use agreements, there is, information around that, and obviously when we are training students in the, really starting from the elementary level, there are conversations that are part of their instruction that are around what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. I think it's our sophomores also, we bring in the KSB law firm, and they actually come in and they talk about inappropriate use of technology and obviously some of the legal ramifications around that. So yeah, I obviously there's probably always opportunities for more training, but we do start at an early age when they start, because they're using technology from the kindergarten on. We start talking about what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate use of that technology.
Further questions? I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 8450, student discipline as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Policy 8452 on behavioral intervention and classroom management. Again, this was something that came out of the legislature that the attorney prepared a policy for us on. I guess this was another one of those situations where the things that were spelled out in the policy that came forward were pretty in line with the things that we were already doing in terms of our multi-tiered system of behavior supports. So again, It's not gonna force us to do anything different operationally, but we did not have a policy around that, and again, the recommendation from the attorney is that we do have a policy around that.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 8452, behavioral intervention and classroom management as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 8650, participation in extracurricular activities. Again, legislatively mandated that there be a designation of what were boys' sports, girls' sports, and mixed sports. And so the attorney has put together a policy statement that just simply says the superintendent or their designee shall, as required by law, designate each school-sponsored interscholastic athletic team or sport as either boys, girls, or mixed.
Mr. Hawley.
Mr. Fisher, the title of this one is participation in extracurricular activities, and we're specifically noting this as interscholastic athletic teams or sports. Does this extend beyond sports? Are there other activities that, like robotics club, that we needed to specify, or
No.
is it's just sport?
The legislature just mandated that for interscholastic athletic sports teams.
Okay. I was just a little confused, just making sure we were
Yeah.
in alignment with the title. So,
Yep,
perfect.
no. Well, the title, is extracurricular activities, and as you look through the rest of what's in this policy, there are things about extracurricular activities that may not be sports, but the legislative statement that we needed to have was specific to sports.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve policy 8650, participation in extracurricular activities as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion. Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Dr. Stevens, 7.4 Student Handbook.
Okay, so asking you tonight to approve the changes as presented that will include those policies that you all just went through as listed on the second page of those changes for student appearance, harassment and bullying, notice of non-discrimination, and parental access to educational practices. So asking you for your approval.
Any questions for Dr. Summers? All right, at this time, or Dr. Stevens, excuse me, at this time I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the 25-26 student handbook as presented.
Second by Ms. Albers. Discussion? Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, that moves us down to reports. Item 8.1, Grand Island Public Schools Foundation Report. Ms. Lisa Albers.
August 6, 2025, we celebrated Welcome Back and Teacher of the Year awards. One of the Foundation's favorite program is Teacher of the Year. This past school year, we asked for nominations to celebrate teachers, staff, and administration. We received over 2,000 nominations for 487 different individuals. A committee of community volunteers were tasked to read through all 2,000 plus nominations and select one person from each of our 6 categories. Every year, the volunteers find this task to be extremely difficult. They know that so many deserve this award, but they can only choose one per category. The selected teachers and staff members will receive a certificate and a check for $500. The recipient of the Administrator Award will receive a certificate and $1,000 of additional building or department budget authority for their administrative area. Thank you to First National Bank of Omaha, who has generously sponsored our Teacher of the Year Award for 21 years. Congratulations to Abigail Johnson, an 8th grade teacher at Walnut Middle School, who is the recipient of the Dr. Eugene Miller Legacy Grant of $1,000. The family of Dr. Gene Miller created an annual grant fund to invest in the students at Grand Island by investing in the quality of their educators. K-O-P-P-E. Haley Kepi, an 11th and 12th grade English teacher at Grand Island Senior High, and Alyssa Jensen, a 3rd grade teacher at Wasmer Elementary School, were both awarded the GIPS Foundation Professional Development Grant of $1,000. Our GIPS teachers have headed back to the classroom, and we want to announce that classroom grant applications opened on August 1st. This grant is for teachers that think outside the box, looking to offer their students new opportunities that are outside the basic curriculum. The 3rd annual Harvest event is going to be on September 25th, 2025. Tickets are now available at gipsfoundation.org. Harvest event will include cocktails, live and silent auctions, dinner, dessert dash, mission moment on raising funds for scholarships. Speakers will be Brian Levander. Heart of the Foundation Award will be honoring Dan and Ron Eakes. Colleen Williams will host. Phil Wick will be the auctioneer. Dress is casual, and presenting sponsor is Tom and Kim Dinsdale. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Albers. Any questions for Ms. Albers? Seeing none, thank you very much. 8.2, Superintendent Report.
All right, well, the big news is school's underway. We had our kindergarten, our 6th grade, and our 9th grade students in yesterday, and obviously great opportunity, I think, for those students to get acclimated to a building that's new to them and acclimated to staff that's new to them before there are lots of other students. I had a chance to spend some time up at the high school, and you think about it, seeing them move from class to class, and then the comment was, well, let's see how this goes tomorrow when 2,000 more students are in these hallways. But no, I think it's a great opportunity for our students to really get a little bit of a sense of where they're at and what they need to do, and so I think all of that went well. Had the opportunity to be in a couple of kindergarten places where parents were dropping kids off, and there were tears in not very many students, but a few parents' eyes. As I talked to other schools, it didn't sound like we had a whole lot of crying, but I did see a little here and there. 6th graders, they're wide-eyed, and talked a little bit about it earlier. Dr. Stevens did, and one of the comments that was made today was that those students that had been through Jumpstart and then had been through yesterday really were being able to provide some leadership for those other students that maybe hadn't got it all figured out yet. But anyhow, we're off and running. Everything seems to be in a good place right now. All of the schools, I got to all of them now between yesterday and today, and they all seem pretty positive about where they were at. A lot of real positive comments about the kindergarten class being, now one day in, I'm not sure how much you know yet, but and they did preface their statement, but they felt pretty good about their kindergarten classes, so that was good. As mentioned in the foundation report, our welcome back last week, I think was good. Again, I think well received. We've kind of tried to trim it down to a couple hours. I think that's been really well received by our staff. I think our speaker, John Paul Gonzalez, was someone that actually spoke at the state school board conference last year. I had the chance to see him there. I felt like he had a really good message, and we were able to get him lined up to speak to our staff. And we talked about being all in and really committing to what you were doing. And the exciting thing that I've seen is that a lot of the schools, I see different all-in things that are up, and so obviously the message resonated with I think most of our staff. So that was good. We did our staff recognition. Obviously the Foundation Awards was part of that. We also did a number of 25-year pins, and that was always, when you think about a 25-year commitment to the same district, that really is pretty impressive. I I think back on my own career, 14 years was the longest I've ever been in one district. And so to think about, being almost twice that, that's pretty impressive. So we do have one of those impressive members here, Mr. Virgil Harden. We recognized Virgil and Brian Court and Wayne Stelk today. We had a little reception for them. So, and Virgil got a solid gold with a large diamond pin. So anyhow, those were things that took place last week. Something exciting. We're going to be able to pay for that solid gold and large diamond in his pin with some grant money we just found out we're going to receive. We did get notice today that we are going to receive the literacy grant that is through the state, that's federally funded. We're one of 46 schools in the state that's going to receive that, and we're going to get about $440,000 through that grant fund that will help pay for some literacy activities that we've got planned. So that was exciting news. The last thing I wanted to mention is we are still struggling to find a date for our fall retreat. We sent out a question, we were not able to find an evening in the time frame that we had talked about in terms of that October, early November. So we are now back. We're going to look at days. So trying to do something during the day and see if we can find a time for that, or possibly a Saturday morning or something along those lines. So we'll be sending out another survey. It'll be coming to you before too long. And so I think that's about all I have to report. Any questions anyone has?
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Fisher. We appreciate it. Item number 9 on the agenda is executive session for the purpose of real estate, because it is in the best interest of the public to discuss this matter in closed session. At this time, I would entertain a motion to convene to executive session.
I make a motion for the board to convene to executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate.
Second by Ms. Albers.
back, Angela.
At this point in time, I would entertain a motion to reconvene from executive session.
I make a motion for the board to reconvene from executive session.
Second by Ms. Douglas. Discussion? Seeing none. We're on number 11. Approval of any action deemed necessary as a result.
We gotta vote.
Oh, we gotta vote. Gotta vote, sorry. Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, we may proceed to a vote. Okay. Number 11, we don't need. The only thing is our notification of upcoming board meetings. Regular Board of Education meeting.